Welcome to the Deepdale podcast. This is the July 2024 episode. I'm Jason, and this month I'm chatting with two local residents who both started life in Branxter Staithe and Burnham Deepdale, and who, like me, went off to explore the wider world, only to find themselves being drawn back to the beautiful North Norfolk Coast. First up, I chat with Amanda Luce, who is the editor of North Norfolk Living magazine. Then we have a wildlife update from Oli of One Stop Nature Shop while he mans his stall at the Global Bird Fair. And then I chat with Martin Billing, serial entrepreneur and producer of the excellent North Norfolk The Guide. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the listen, then please do leave a review and subscribe through whichever app or directory you usually get your podcasts. Best of all, let others know about our little slice of North Norfolk life. And we hope you'll join us for future episodes. The full back catalogue is available through any good podcast app. Enjoy this month's episode.
Skies all open wide, geese go high and over. Oh, now you're a beachcomber, fistful of sandfire, sea, lavender, see you next year.
This month we are celebrating an important anniversary as it's 20 years of a publication that kind of is the North Norfolk Coast, and it is called North Norfolk Living. And I am very, very pleased to welcome Amanda Luce to the podcast. She is editor of the magazine, and we have known each other since we were small kids. Lovely to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining me, Amanda.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
And I hear this is not you're normally sort of behind the stories rather than being the one that's recorded or live.
That's right. This is a first for me. So.
Excellent. Well, just relax and don't worry about it. And the nice thing is it's very informal. That's the great thing about podcasts. So it's brilliant. So how long have you been with the magazine?
Well, I started writing for it in 2011 when Lynn Murray, who you also know, was the editor, and I kept writing away. And then my role sort of grew as Lynn sort of was doing other things. And I started editing in 2014. So this is also my 10th year.
Got you. And is this the full-time job, or do you do lots of other things as well?
It's become a full-time job. So although you have quieter periods, there's always something going on, which is, keeps it all interesting.
Yeah. There's no shortage of stuff going on in our part of the world, is there really?
That's right.
Excellent. And you come from a Branxter Staithe family, and we worked out that our fathers were neighbours. You've disappeared off and done other things, but you were drawn back by the North Norfolk coast like me.
Absolutely. I mean, my circumstances changed, and it was the only place I wanted to be. I could come back and had various opportunities to sort of build a kind of life up here.
And have you always written? Is it something that you've always done, sort of, because what did you study at uni? Was it writing related?
I studied English.
Right.
But I actually sort of ended up writing almost a very happy accident. I sort of got a job temping on a newspaper, and then someone there sort of offered me the chance to do some writing, and it sort of grew from there, and I'm really glad it did.
Yeah. And what sort of stories used to interest you before you got delved completely into the North Norfolk coast?
I've always been sort of on the features side, so interviewing people, book reviews, lots on property and interiors and things like that. So although we do that now, we're sort of doing the whole package.
Tell the listeners about the magazine. I'm sure many of them will have picked up copies. It's available from the Tourist Information Centre at Burnham Deepdale and lots of other places. What is the essence of your magazine?
I suppose we've got a very sort of simple strap line, which I think sort of covers it. It's basically, what's on, what's good, and where to go. And it's just trying to pack in as much as we can of, events that are coming up, sort of, celebrating the area, sort of the nature and the landscape, the foodie scene, independent shops, the art scene, which just gets stronger and stronger every year.
Yeah.
And really the people that,
Yeah.
they're the core. There's some really inspiring people to meet and sort of share their stories.
It's quite nice. There's a real mixture of the inspiring, the community-led, and the outright nuts, who just the real entertaining characters, aren't there? So yeah, you get to cover all of that. It's
I think
brilliant.
I'm related to some of those.
Knowing your brothers, I can't imagine who you might be thinking of. So, in case you didn't know, the Luces are well known on the North Norfolk coast for producing fantastic seafood, and your brothers are still out there doing that now.
Well, yeah, we're now at the seventh generation because my nephew is also fishing alongside his father and two of my brothers. So, it's very exciting and lovely to see it sort of continuing down the family, and also the way they all embrace the sort of family history and the ethos.
Who writes all the stuff in the magazine? It's a full-time job for you now. So do you end up having to write a lot of the stuff, or have you got a whole team of people behind you, or how does it work?
I write quite a bit. As the magazine's getting bigger, that obviously has to go down because the editing and kind of general overseeing role grows each time. But yeah, I've got a lovely team who are really passionate about the area, and they sort of, they can all write generally, but will have their specialism. So we've got a guy called Robin who does our fantastic sort of nature pages, and I learn at least 10 new things each time he files his copy. So yeah, it's we've sort of built up a really good team. We're all sort of on the same page about what we want to do.
For people who haven't picked it up, what sort of size is the magazine? Is it a big sort of chunky kind of lifestyle magazine, or is it sort of somewhere kind of smaller, which is much more manageable to enjoy?
I suppose for a reader, hopefully it's manageable to enjoy, but lots of sort of things to dip in and out of, and trying to tell you this is on. Did you know about that? Because even I spend quite a lot of time researching what's on, and kind of trying to pull it together. On the editorial side, it actually feels like a huge thing, but hopefully for the reader, it's manageable.
Do you manage to get a chance to go out and see a lot of these events that you cover?
Not as many as you'd think, because sometimes you'd love to do it all, but you just can't, and you finish one magazine and then you're on to the next, sort of particularly in the busy summer period. So it's sort of slightly head down. Often.
And it's a monthly magazine, is it? So it comes out every month.
It's 5 times a year, so it kind of
5 times a year. Okay.
Kind of seasons up here. So we have spring, early summer, high summer, autumn, and then winter.
If it's like a lot of magazines I get, it sits there, and I've only just started reading the one copy before the next one arrives. So with 5 a year, that's perfect because you can kind of actually get yourself deep into it and engrossed in it before the next one comes out, which is a great way of doing it. Yeah.
I think it really helps as well with the editorial because there's so much to celebrate seasonally that it can kind of really make it sort of quite sort of cohesive.
Do you find with the winter edition, do you find there's a lot more happening than used to? You were probably really hunting around for content in the winter, although the wildlife is just glorious in the winter, isn't it? But kind of things like events and what's on must have been much harder to fill, but in the winter months previously. But there seems to be so much more stuff going on now.
Absolutely, yeah. Every year there's something else, and the events are done to such an amazing standard.
Yeah.
Up here, we're so sort of fortunate.
How did the magazine come about? How did it start? Who sort of thought, I've got this great idea?
It was a man called Nicholas Rudd Jones who had moved to Stamford in the 90s and set up a magazine there called North Living in 2002. And like a lot of people in Stamford, he discovered North Norfolk, and it came about because he's a real walker and walked the Norfolk Coast path and just fell in love with the area. And the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, got you. And so he carried on for a while, and then various editors came in at various points.
Well, he's always sort of had the publisher role, so he still very much does that, and is a real sort of help and advisor.
He's still actively involved with the magazine.
yeah, I mean, he doesn't do anything on the editorial side, but he has a sort of business involvement and just general, really sort of safe pair of hands, good advice.
What's your favorite thing about managing a magazine like this? What do you find really works for you in terms of the job and the role?
Oh, that's a difficult one. Because like I'd say something different at each sort of stage of the publication cycle. I think probably it's hearing from people that they've actually really enjoyed it, and it's sort of brought some joy, or they've learned something new, or they've read it and gone somewhere, or eaten somewhere that we included that they really enjoyed, and you sort of think you're creating something which kind of gives some pleasure to people. Which, if
Yeah.
you've got four brothers like mine, you do need members of the public to tell you. They're rather sort of flippant about it sometimes.
Yeah, I remember running the Christmas market, and Estelle and I would just craved for someone to say, "Oh, yeah, we quite enjoy this," because it was just
Mm.
way too easy to have lots of critical feedback, but not necessarily
Mm.
feedback that made you feel good about yourself.
Yeah, that feedback that makes you think, yeah, that those early starts and long days were actually really worthwhile because you've created something, brings people pleasure.
And so, do you get a chance to put your writing skills to use elsewhere? Do you have a chance to, you're not secretly writing a book about life on the North Norfolk coast, or a detective series, or major articles for the Times or something like that?
No, I'm firmly just doing North Norfolk Living at the moment and
Yeah.
trying to do a bit of, actual North Norfolk Living as well.
Trying to enjoy some of the things that
Yes,
you write about.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Prior to running this, were you writing for newspapers and stuff?
Yeah, in my sort of 20s and early 30s, I was a freelance on newspapers and sort of, yeah, mainly doing features. So
Yeah.
it was a really good grounding. People were always very generous with their time, and sort of sharing their experience. So I learned a lot, about what not to do as much as what to do. I try to remember when I'm proofreading an issue.
You've really got to get your head down and work your way through it. Do you different sections, or do you put the whole magazine together and then proofread it?
The whole magazine together and then sort of proofread it.
Yeah.
Kind of
So you've edited everything down to kind of fit approximately, and then you go through and check all the fine detail.
yeah, I mean, my designer sort of sends me the final PDFs of the pages, and then I kind of print them off, kind of old school, and read them through and check everything I possibly can, websites, dates, everything, you can possibly check, hoping you've, done a good job.
Yeah, I think the red pen and the printed copy, I'm afraid I'm old school like that as well. If I'm doing a poster or whatever, I like to have it there in paper and look
Mm,
like it's going to look for the customer, and so
yeah,
you can actually sit down and work it through. It's good, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah.
Which edition can customers find in the distribution places now?
Well, there'll be possibly some high early summer issues left, and then the big one for the year is High Summer, which comes on the 10th of July, which we're going to sort of celebrate our 20th anniversary year with. It's our sort of third out of five, so it's halfway, and there's so much to celebrate in the area, for High Summer and share that's going on.
Fantastic, fantastic. So whereabouts can people find the magazine if they're wanting to pick up a physical copy?
Well, we deliver sort of bulk copies to outlets, right, sort of from Cromer right along the coast. So, sort of for our particular area, there are lots in Burnham Market. Obviously, they have them at Deepdale Tourist Information in the grocery shop, and a couple of the shops there. So yeah, it's pretty well distributed. We also do, well, our distributors rather, who are fantastic, do door-to-door delivery in sort of certain towns and villages as well.
Can people, if they're outside of the county, and can they subscribe in any way, get it posted to them?
Yes, you can do that. You can subscribe via our website, and then we sort of, send you the 5 copies over the year.
So if they're not here regularly, but they want their fix of North Norfolk Living, they can do that through the
Yep,
website.
yep, definitely. And we'll send you a printed copy.
Excellent. And so what is the website address in case people want more information?
It's www.northnorfolkliving.co.uk.
Well, good luck with the bumper summer edition. Are you all edited now? Is it off to the printers, or have you got a huge amount more work to do?
Still got quite a lot more work to do, but it's always rewarding to get really interesting people's pieces coming in from the writers and thinking, wow, that I'm really interested in that. So hopefully the readers will be too. Each issue, you sort of think you've lived here for a lot of your life, but I learn at least 10 new things. It's very rewarding.
Lovely to speak to you. Thank you so much, Amanda. And really nice to know a bit more about North Norfolk Living. And I urge listeners to pick up a copy and have a good thumb through, see all that great information, and to keep themselves abreast of what's going on locally. Thank you for featuring us when you featured us. That's really lovely of you, and it's great to see something really vibrant coming from our part of the world. There just seems to be a growing community of really fabulous stuff coming from our part of the world, and it's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, every year there's sort of something new to celebrate.
Yeah, and I think seeing the open studios and the artists and the various theatre events and it seems to be so many festivals now. It's just wonderful. So it's
we did a massive roundup. I think we did 20 festivals in the early summer issue that are coming up this year, and that wasn't all of them. So yeah. It's really sort of growing, isn't it?
And the lovely thing is that none of them are too big. They're kind of all kind of chilled, relaxed, enjoyable festivals that are kind of about enjoying whatever the featured part of that festival is. And it's lovely. So yeah. Well, thank you for all your work, and thank you for the publication, and keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Hi there, it's Oli from the One Stop Nature Shop again, and this time I'm coming to you from the Global Bird Fair at Rutland Water. This is a fantastic event that's held every year, and we're here exhibiting our trail cameras and also thermal images, all of which you can actually find in our shop at Burnham Deepdale all year round. So summer is advancing, and you wouldn't actually think it with how the weather's been. It's been unfortunately very cold as it is here this morning. We're in the middle of July and we've all got our hoodies on, and it's certainly not what we were expecting in terms of this event, because last year it was sort of the mid-20s with torrential rain, and the year before, if you remember, this time is when we hit the 40-degree mark, which was actually quite unpleasant. So in a weird way, it's quite nice for it to be a little bit cooler. In terms of wildlife, it has been a fairly quiet summer in terms of birds, and certainly in terms of insects. I don't know if anyone else has noticed that butterflies and dragonflies are quite low this year. However, we are now approaching the time of year where the excitement builds, certainly for the birders. As we get towards the end of July and into August, we'll start to see the reverse migration, the autumn migration begin to build up, and we'll see wading birds, also passerines such as flycatchers and shrikes, moving back through from their breeding grounds further north in Europe. If you want any of the latest bird news, do pop by the shop at Dalgate Market and we'll be happy to help you out with that. But once again, thank you for listening, and if you are at the Global Bird Fair or have been to the Global Bird Fair in the past, do pop in and let us know. We'd love to hear your stories from that event.
So I am chatting with Martin Billing, who is a name that some of you will know. I would describe him as a serial entrepreneur because him and his lovely wife have got the most amazing range of businesses and have really influenced the local area and employ a lot of people. But most importantly for us at Deepdale is he runs North Norfolk the Guide, which is an incredible little pocket guide about this beautiful part of the world. Welcome to Deepdale Podcast, Martin. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
And so how did the whole kind of North Norfolk the Guide come about?
So I started in basically landscape photography, and then that transitioned into retail. And after opening a shop in Holcombe many years ago in 2006, I very much felt with a lot of other businesses, like many of those like Deepdale and stood on our own in the fact that we weren't in a large town and we weren't heavily supported by the likes of basically the local tourism industry. And I felt we needed to do more to basically shout about people who weren't in these big towns. And as part of that, looked for a way that I could not only shout about myself, but also shout about the local businesses that the network of local businesses that were around me and I'd got to know over my years of being open, and didn't know what that was, what the platform would be. And after spending some time on a holiday, basically traveling America, we spent some time in Vegas. And when we arrived in Las Vegas, in the cab that picked us up at the airport was a small pocket guide in the back of the cab that I picked up and I put in my pocket. And for the next, I can't remember how many days we were there, 2-3 days we were there, this guide stayed with me the whole time purely because it had a map in. And to be fair, most of the other information in it was pretty much useless, but the map was what kept that guide in my pocket. And when we basically got in another cab to go back to the airport, they had the same guides in the back. And that was the moment that I realized that actually this one piece of information had been with me the whole time I was there. And actually, if it was used well, was a really useful tool for getting information over to people, because it wasn't like, a map I could have just picked up that I would have struggled to fold back up and get in my pocket, or a leaflet on somewhere to go to eat. It was a full resource that I could have access to while I was there. And for me as a visitor was a very useful tool, and seeing it from the point of view as a business was a very good tool, because as we now say to the businesses we work with the guide, is that basically we can get your business into the pockets of people who are coming here to stay and looking for things to do. And basically that idea in the cab going back to the airport stuck with me. And that was in the February, and in the June of that year, we released the first edition of North Norfolk the Guide, thankfully with the support of I think about 35 businesses that were willing to come on board and support that idea. And it wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for those businesses that had basically seen the idea that we had and ran with it.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic. And I love the fact that you and I both grew up in the same place in Bragstaith and Burnham Deepdale, and we're both local kids. And it's fascinating seeing how some people have sort of disappeared off to do other things, but just a few local kids have kind of really become a part, backbone of the local sort of tourism industry. And you now run with your wife, a lovely wife, you run a whole series of other businesses. What give us a kind of a breakdown of what else it is you do.
So starting just to touch on what you said, I think for us is the reason we dare do what we do with all of those businesses is because having grown up here, I never wanted to leave. I'm always quite happy to go and travel and see the world, but this is where my home is, and this is where I'm very fortunate now to raise my own children. And I knew going into my adult life that if I wanted to raise my own children here and have a life here, I needed to build a business that really catered to everyone who was coming here. And that's how kind of our train of businesses has come from. And I started with Bringing the Outside In, which, as I touched on, came from a photography background, which has since moved on into a full world of retail. Unfortunately, don't necessarily get the time to do the photography now, but I have other creative outlets, which I'm happy with. But it's
designing shops.
Yes. But we are Bringing the Outside In, which is a store in Wales, which he started in Holcombe, moved to Wales, which is all about the outdoors, really inspired by what's around us and what anyone who's coming to the area will see. As well as Bringing the Outside In with my wife Sarah, we then opened Nomad and the Bowerbird, which is all about things from afar. So predominantly ladies' clothing, homeware, gift, but a lot of color pattern. We pull in a lot of stock from America, from France, from the Netherlands, from Spain, Italy, Denmark, Sweden, and probably many more that I can't remember off the top of my head. But that they were kind of our two core retail brands that we've then basically, once they've got firmly established in Wales, we, through the pandemic, then added Ocotillo, which is inspired by our travels to Southwest America, and has kind of touch of Nordic in there as well. So it's a bit of desert living, a bit of Nordic living, but it's a style which people can just pick out their own little touches and kind of fit into their own interiors. And then also we opened Far in Burnham Market, which is predominantly clothing, but also touches on interiors. Yeah. Feels like a slightly more cleaner version of what we do in our other stores. The merchandising is a lot more minimalist, and it's in a nice huge white box, which is very different to our other styles of merchandising. So that's kind of what we cover from a retail point of view. And then, as well as doing North Norfolk the Guide, we also do Suffolk Coast the Guide, which covers the coast a bit further around, all the way from Beccles through to Ipswich along the coast in Suffolk. And then also Norfolk Restaurant Week, which takes place in the autumn.
And Norfolk Restaurant Week is, I think, a fantastic, I love the whole concept of that. And I know a lot of customers who come to stay at Deepdale love the fact that they can sort of wander around and go to these amazing restaurants and try incredible food at sensible prices. It's just the most wonderful idea. How did that kind of come about?
That again was from traveling elsewhere, really. We happened to be in New York, and New York Restaurant Week was on, and then we flew to stay with our friends in Denver in Colorado, and we saw a bit of advertising for Denver Restaurant Week that was coming up. And at the time, hadn't really thought any more about it until our friends basically had their friends over for an evening, and everyone was chatting, and I overheard some of them talking about what they were doing for Denver Restaurant Week and who was coming. And it suddenly dawned on me that it was a real social occasion for them, and it gave them a reason to go out and eat and to kind of share times together, which, again, thinking from the business side, it was also good for those restaurants, because it put people in those restaurants at a time when they may not be there. So again, as with the guide, I'm like, right, actually there's some legs here. So we took that idea back, again, thankfully, to a small bunch of restaurants who started with this, launched it in North Norfolk originally before making it Norfolk Restaurant Week. But the interesting thing with it was originally aimed 100%. We hadn't thought about the bigger picture of kind of people coming into the area to come and stay for it. It was predominantly for local people, to encourage local people to eat out during the winter months and basically support restaurants at a slower period of trade, and kind of help them get through the winter, which traditionally is quite a hard time for us on the coast, and basically see them through into the busiest season again. And after the first couple of years, we started to see the diner numbers increasing, and it was very evident that, as well as the local people who were jumping on that scheme and supporting restaurants, there was a large amount of people who were predominantly booking a stay during Norfolk Restaurant Week, because it was a great time to come to the coast. So the event has grown to the point now we have about 43,000 diners last year.
Wow.
Across about 85 restaurants.
43,000 diners.
Yeah, which
that's incredible.
If you think about them all together, it's quite a scary thing.
Yes.
It's it's kind of, I think
sort of half of Wembley.
Yeah, you don't think about it like that. And it's the same with the guide. When you think with the small guide, we started off, I think, printing 35,000 copies, and then we moved to 50, and now we print 90,000, which at a time when you go to press print and basically the printer to print 90,000 copies, which is a very large financial investment, years ago would have caused a lot of panic and stress. But now I just have to not think about the fact that there's 90,000 of them on their way. But it's kind of, I think it's a nice way of business. So it just snowballs in a very natural way.
Yeah.
And before you know it, it's half of Wembley eating out in North Norfolk, or Norfolk.
That's amazing. I love the fact I love the fact that yourself, Amanda at North Norfolk Living, who's going to be the other half of this podcast, and all these other businesses, that we're all such believers in cooperative working in terms of kind of like the sum of the parts is so much greater than the actual individual bits. I think that's the thing that you realized very early on when you were doing stuff, was the fact that if you don't collaboratively work with other people, then you're just shouting into a storm, really, aren't you? Whereas when you come together, Norfolk Restaurant Week's a prime example. The Guide's a prime example. You just by coming together collectively, the difference is quite dramatic.
I think it's one of the things that I have learnt. I think going into business, the automatic reaction is that everything else is competition, and I need to treat everyone else as competition. And I think it took me a couple of years to realize that not everyone needs to be considered competition, and that there is a slice of the pie there for everyone. And a lot of that came out originally when I had Bringing the Outside In. People who've been coming to Coast for a long time will remember there used to be a shop in Wales called Big Blue Sky. It used to be run by a lovely lady called Kath. And Kath, we shared the same customers, very similar businesses, although to go into them, they looked very different, but we shared the same customers. And once I opened Bring the Outside In, didn't go in Big Blue Sky because they were my competitor, and Kath was the same. And after a couple of years, we were just suddenly like, why are we not working together? Because we're aiming at the same customer, and there's enough spend for us all to benefit. So from that point onwards, Kath and I started advertising. In anything we advertised in, we took a joint advert and we advertised side by side, and it really benefited both of our businesses. And I think that was the point in my younger business mind that I realized that the much bigger picture, and from then onwards, kind of everything we've done has been very much to support everyone else. And I'm quite happy to go into we have very different ways. Obviously, when retail is our own businesses, but when we're looking at something for the much greater good, like North Norfolk the Guide, or Suffolk Coast, or Norfolk Restaurant Week, or the North Norfolk Food and Drink Festival, which I'm involved with from a volunteering aspect, it's all done for basically to support the area and to boost the economy, to give visitors a better experience, to get them coming back, to go and tell their friends. And it's one thing with the Guide is really nice to get completely out of the blue. Every now and again, you'll get an email from an individual, a couple of family who have picked up that Guide and will just basically send me a testimonial without any, encouragement for them to do so, saying how that has made their holiday, and they've been to so many places they wouldn't have gone to, and without it wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have had the experience in North Norfolk that they had. And I think that that should be the attitude we all look for, is to basically enhance everyone's experience, because it just snowballs and it benefits the whole coast, and it makes it a much stronger place. So for me, I would much rather look at a collaborative, collective approach.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me. It's fantastic. Where do people head to kind of get more information? Are all the businesses separate websites, kind of, or is there a common feature of Martin? Here are all my entrepreneur things.
That's one thing I have been pestering my designer on doing, is basically coming up with an umbrella brand that basically covers everything we do, but as yet there is not that. But basically, North Norfolk the Guide is available to pick up right the way along the coast. If you're here, you will very much likely stumble across them in any way you're staying or going to eat or shopping. And Norfolk Restaurant Week, which kicks off beginning of November for 2 weeks, you can find full details at norfolkrestaurantweek.co.uk. And from a retail perspective, all of our stores, 3 of them based in Wales and 1 in Burnham Market, are all accessible via Nomad and thebowerbird.co.uk. which is easier for us to run one online store with everything we do rather than 4. So that is almost an umbrella brand of retail. So
Yeah, fantastic.
But no, it's been great talking to you. Appreciate it.
I really hope you have a fantastic season. I know it's been an interesting start to it, but hopefully it will work out. And thank you so much for all your collaborative working. It's it's a pleasure working with you. It's lovely seeing you at events when we're all there, actually managing to let our hair down for more than 2 minutes. And and thank you so much for all your work on the North Norfolk coast. It is hugely appreciated, even if you don't always get told as often as you should. But it is fantastic. Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for listening to July's episode. We love putting together this podcast and always welcome suggestions of people we should interview, soundscapes we should include, or events we should cover. Please send your suggestions to podcast@deepdalepodcast.co.uk. Please do leave a review of your favourite podcast app or directory and let your friends and family know about us. Thanks again for listening.
Skies all open wide, geese go high and over. Oh, now you're a beachcomber, fistful of sandfire, sea, lavender, sea.